In this video, we're going to take a look at how to price service type jobs. By service type jobs, what we mean is jobs with recurring services or things you need to track multiple visits on. The difference between a service estimate and a standard estimate is that a standard estimate doesn't track what we call visits. Visits are the number of times we would go back and do something. So for example, an install job would be putting in a patio. It may take a couple days, but there's no pure visits. We're not going back and doing multiple patios at the same house. However, in something like lawn mowing, you'd go back and you'd cut the lawn 26 times a year, 30 times a year, whatever your climate is like. And so that's what we mean by service estimates. Any estimate that you want to make where you want to price something that happens over and over again, so recurring service, you're going to want to use a service estimate to build that. And this video is about how to build pricing for service estimates. Now, we were covered in the overview video how the customer info screen and how to create a new estimate. So I'm going to jump right to the pricing part of service estimates. To get there, you want to make sure you hit services and pricing. Now, if your title bar up here is dark red, you know you're using service estimates. If it's blue, you're using standard. And you're not going to see the same things on the screen with a standard as you will with service. It is very similar, but there's a couple of subtle differences that really make service estimates different. The first thing we'll cover is, again, the budget. So it's really important to understand that the budget is what drives both the default profit and the overhead recovery for any estimate you build. So you've set up your default budget here, and there is a separate default budget for standard and service. Make sure the budget that you want to use for service estimates is selected here going forward. And then maybe every couple of months or maybe once a year, you're going to be reviewing that with the owner to make sure that you're still using the correct budget. So when we make a budget, it pulls the default budget. However, I can change that at any time. So you can click the edit button. If you did use the wrong budget or if you want to change it, you can certainly change it here. You can also change the overhead recovery method or specify your own overhead recovery factors. Now, it's not often you're going to get in here and change the overhead recovery factors, but you might. You might have to change them. There's certain cases where maybe we're bidding a really big job or whatever, and we want to get lean, where we would customize these. But you can do any of all of those things. Assuming you're just using your default budget or assuming you get the correct budget picked, the next thing you're going to see different from a standard estimate is this per season section here. So estimates don't have this, or at least install estimates don't have this. But in a service estimate, you will have the ability to set up a seasonal price spread out across X number of payments, and you can define how many payments here. Anything that's billed down here as per season, so there's a billing type, will get added up into this per season total, and then that total will get split across this many payments to give you a payment price. It's about how you're going to break it up if a customer pays you monthly, for example. Now, I don't have to be per season. I can be per visit. I can be hourly, and let's look at that now. This is an example of a service estimate that's already done. What you're going to want to do when you're starting a service estimate from scratch, and let's delete mowing here and watch how I might build that from scratch. When I want to add a new service to a service estimate, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit Add Service. So when I click Add Service, I'm going to enter the name of the service. Then you can enter the billing type, whether it's per visit, which means we're going to bill every time we do this. So if I was going to bill each time I cut the lawn, I'm going to choose per visit. If I'm going to wrap the lawn mowing in a monthly package price, I'm going to choose per season. And if I bill hourly for this service, usually per hour per unit is reserved for things like spring cleanups or removals and relocates in snow bids. That's stuff that you want to charge by the hour. I'm going to choose per season. That's a common one for mowing. And then the next thing I need to define is number of visits. So this is these two fields right here are the big difference between install and maintenance estimates. Here, I'm allowed to pick that I'm going to do this. I want it wrapped up under a seasonal price, and I'm going to do this mowing 30 times or whatever it is. The cost code is the account that I want to empty this revenue into when we force it over to QuickBooks or push it over to QuickBooks. Click OK to add mowing. Now that it's created a new mowing service for you, you need to add items. Before I do that, I just want to stress each service that has a different number of visits is going to need its own add service. So you can see here on mine, I have spring cleanup, I have fertilizing, I have aerating, I have fall cleanup. I can't merge these. They all have to be their own lists. I can't merge these things into one giant estimate because each one has a different number of visits. If they all had the same visits, it'd be no problem. But I can't put fertilizing, for example, in with the mowing, because mowing we're going to do 30 times, fertilizing only 4 times. It's important to get your head around that before you get too far into service estimating. Anything that has a unique number of visits has to be broken out. Now, if every time I go mowing, I also clean up the trash out of the beds, that's something we can certainly build into mowing. I don't have to make a separate service for that. However, if you wanted to offer that service as an extra to mowing, then you would want to break it out so it shows up here as a unique price and it's something your customers can pick from. Now let's get back to finishing our mowing. Anytime you want to enter a price on any one of these services, click the edit button and that'll take you into here. Now I just created mowing, so I don't have any labor or equipment or anything in there yet. So to add that, I'm going to go over here and hit add items and templates again. Now I'm going to pick the crew that's going to do the mowing. So I want a maintenance crew. Now I'm going to pick the equipment we need. So I'm going to click the equipment and then I'm going to pick crew truck and maintenance trailer. Now, as far as mowing goes, that's all I'm going to need. I don't really need anything else. The only other case you may have a yard waste charge. If you do, you could certainly create a material called disposal of yard waste and have a fixed cost for that. So if you do charge for that, that's something I could add into here. At this point, I'll just leave it at crew and truck and trailer. So then close that extra window down, the add items window, get that out of the way. And now we can deal with the mowing. So right now they both come in at 1 hour. What you want to do is figure out how long it's going to take first. Now, if I have 2 guys on this site for an hour and a half, that's going to be 3 hours. So remember, every time you're estimating, the labor is in man hours. There may be very, very exceptional circumstances. If you followed our tutorial videos, you're working in man hours. Some of you may have not followed the tutorial videos and done it in crew hours. You can double check over here. That's my unit cost per hour. That's my unit price per hour. So if I'm in and around the $40 per hour range, you should know that's per man per hour, not the price for the whole crew for the hour. Next, I'll go to the crew truck and maintenance trailer. So if I have 2 guys for an hour and a half, I need 3 hours of crew, but I only need an hour and a half of truck. Each guy doesn't have a truck, so that's why there's a difference there. And then I click off that. And now I have a price for this cut. So I not only have a price by the cut, so that's price per visit, I also have a seasonal price, and that's $4,800. So that is the price per visit times the 30 visits up here that we said we're going to do for mowing. So the seasonal price is going to be $4,803.75. Now I can do whatever I want. I can change costs. I can change the profit margin. For instance, maybe we want to get a little leaner on the estimate for mowing, and so I drop the profit margin down to do that. And I can charge higher profit margins on other things perhaps in this contract. So that's one option I have. The other options you have for pricing include the ability to just change the unit price. So I could drop my labor rate on this job, for example, to 38. Now, if I do this, watch what happens to my profit. It changes to reflect how much I'm making at 38. So at $38 an hour, I'm just about break even, minus 0.1% profit. So I wouldn't really want to do it at this price, but I know I could. And then if I settle on I want to charge $40 an hour for the mowing, then it shows me my profit there. Don't forget, though, there's also a charge here for the crew, truck, and trailer. So the combined price per visit right now as it stands is $152.07, or times 30 visits, $4,562 across the season. There's some tools over here you can use. Once I've finished editing that, I can go close. I might recommend you save it after you close just to save your changes. And now what I can do actually is drop down this arrow beside mowing and choose things like customize per visit price. So right now I have a very odd number, $152.07. Maybe you want to just make it an even $160. So you can click customize per visit price. You can set a custom price and you can say $160. Hit OK. And now it's $160. Now note, mine is actually $160.01. Why? Well, just because the visits times the quantity per visit times the unit cost couldn't get to exactly 160. Numbers just didn't round to 2 decimals that way. So you have the option now of just leaving it, or you could even add an other item called a rounding factor at negative a penny, and that'll get you down to 160. Watch me do that. So I'll hit add items. What you should do is create an other item called a rounding factor. I've got one right here. And just make sure that rounding factor is set to 0% profit. We don't want profit or any overhead recovery impacting this at all. So I'm going to add my rounding factor now, close it down. Now to get this rounding factor to subtract 1 cent from my total here, all I'm going to do is go into the unit cost and hit negative 1 cent. And now it's the 160. Now note, if you're going to make a rounding factor, just be sure you've set the profit margin to 0. You don't want profit to impact that. But now that it's at negative 1%, now 1 cent, now I've got the even 160. And that's how to get to an even number if you want. Close that down, and I've got my 160 per visit. Now maybe you also want to round the per season price, or instead, you're not doing a per cut price, you're doing a per season price, and you'd rather round that. Well, again, you can go to edit, you can do customize per season price, and I could set that to any customized price I want. You can also change the sort order here. So when I'm done with mowing, for example, if I want it to be right after spring cleanup, I can set the order to 2 and it'll pop up there. So any order you want your services to be in, anytime you want to change a price or a cost or an item in a service, say you forgot something, you just quickly go over here to the edit button, hit edit beside the service you want to charge, and then you can add items, you can change items, you can delete items, do anything you need to adjust the price from there. Hit close and you're back to the list of services. Each time I want to add a service, I just go back here and hit add service, and that'll create a new row. So for example, if I did garden bed weeding as part of this contract as well, I'm going to add that. I'm going to say billing type is, maybe it's per season. We're going to do this 12 times a year, and I'm also going to put this to maintenance. I hit add, it adds this. I'm going to add for weeding a horticulture crew and their truck and dump trailer. And then I just specify the hours. If I'm going to be at this property for 45 minutes with 2 people, that's an hour and a half. That's going to be 45 minutes. And now I've got my price for weekly garden bed weeding. I may also want to change this order, put it in a different spot in the contract, and there it is. Now let's pause for a second. All these things are billed per season. So now I've got a per season price up here of $7,400 for this job over 7 payments. If you're in a circumstance where you don't want to include spring cleanup in your monthly for cash flow reasons, what you can do is click on spring cleanup and change it to per visit. Now, as soon as I do that, the cost of the spring cleanup will still be in the proposal. However, as you're going to see from the per season total, when I change that, this changed. So with the spring cleanup in the seasonal price, it's $7,400 or $1,000 per payment. But if I wanted to exclude spring cleanup from the seasonal price, I'll change that to per visit. That drops that down, and now my payment per month drops as well. Now, when I print the proposal, this will show up as a per visit price, and these will all show up as the per season price. So that's another way you can change pricing on an estimate for service work. Anything you want to be billed as you do it, just go in here and change the billing type to per visit, per season, or per hour unit, whatever applies. So you don't have to have all per season. You can do a mix matched even within a contract. Now let's say another thing. The customer comes back and says, we don't want the garden bed weeding as part of this contract. What you can do is just go over here and click garden bed weeding on hold. By putting something on hold, what I'm actually doing is also removing it from the estimate. So if I take it off hold, that jumps back to $6,500. If I put it on hold, that then drops down to $5,500. By putting it on hold, what I'm doing is I'm excluding it from the price on this estimate. I'm basically saying the customer doesn't want this option. I like to put things on hold because it A, shows me what the customer declined, but B, if they ever call back and say, you know what, we want to add that back in, very easy for me to put it back in without having to build it again from scratch. So to take something out, let's say this contractor or this customer doesn't want us to do the aeration and doesn't want us to do the fertilizing. I'll tick these 2, I'll put them on hold. These will adjust accordingly, and when I print my proposal, which will be under the print, only the stuff they've accepted will come out on the proposal, not the services that they haven't. So that's a good overview of pricing for service work. On a maintenance side, what about stuff like snow? We'll do a quick example of snow work. I will save my changes here. And then I'll get out to snow. For those of you who price snow by the lift or by the inch, here's a good example of an estimate where I've done that. So I've got one service called salting only, one called 2 to 4 inch, one called 4 to 6 inch, and one called 6 inch plus. If I open the plow and salt 2 to 4 inch, I've got a snowplow operator, I've got a plow and salter, I've got salt, and I've even got some bag salt in case I need to put some down. I've got how long it's going to take us to plow, what our cost and price is for those services, and ultimately my price per plow, my seasonal price. Now in this case, my seasonal price is the same because I'm doing this per visit and I've only got one visit in here. Note that my hours here are 4.5 hours for my 2 to 4 inch plow. The only difference from my 4 to 6 inch plow, so it's exactly the same set of services, I've just got more hours. And it's really easy to make estimates this way. For instance, let's say I wanted this to be a 6 to 8 inch plow instead of a 6 plus. So I'll change the name there and I'll make sure the hours are accurate. I do all that kind of stuff. Now, if I want to make another one, I'll get rid of that extra bracket. If I want to make another one called 8 inch plus, all I need to do is click down and say copy. Now I'll say plow and salt, 8 inch plus. So this is if we go over 8 inches. Hit OK. It'll copy everything from the one I just copied. So if I hit edit, I've got all the same things in here. All I need to change now is how long it's going to take. And I would use my judgment here to put in how long I think it's going to take to do the above 8 inches. And now I've got a price for 8 inch plus. So really simple, really quick, easy to add on the fly. Now, what if you wanted to make this a seasonal contract? If I wanted to build a price for this customer and have it be seasonal, then I'm just going to do this. Let's say we're going to leave the salting up here as per visit. So we're going to charge per application of salt, but I want the plowing to be seasonal. What I would do is try to then guess how many events we're going to have of each type. So I'm going to go to the 2 to 4 inch here, and I'm going to say per season, and then I'm going to estimate, and obviously you're doing this by your climate, I think we're going to have 15 visits of 2 to 4 inches. And then for 4 to 6 inches, I'm going to change that to seasonal, and I'm going to guess we're going to have 5 of those. 6 to 8 inches, I'm going to say we're going to have 2 of those, and I'll change that to per season. So all I'm doing is changing the bill and type and the visits, and I'm going to say per season 2 8 inch plus visits as well. So obviously you'd set this up for your climate. But once you've entered here your seasonal average of snow, and that's all we can estimate on, we don't know what it's going to snow, so you got to come up with your averages when you're billing seasonal work. I've now got a plan for a seasonal contract, and here's my per season total and my number of visits and my price per my number of payments and my price per payment. Now salting is excluded from that because it's still per visit. So those are 2 quick ways to build different kinds of estimates, one for maintenance, one for snow. You can use the same principles to estimate just about any kind of service work. And then in the next couple of videos, we're going to go through a few more advanced tools, how to customize prices, how to customize your client notes on a job, how to analyze these bids, and of course, how to print proposals or email proposals for customers. So stick with us in the other videos.